Welcome to another deep dive from CIN News Group Podcasts. I'm Ira Lee Winter, and today we're swinging into the animated world of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man on Disney+. With me, as always, is the amazing Perkmo Lordson. We're going to unpack some fascinating details from the first two episodes, Amazing Fantasy and the Parker Luck. Things you might have missed, even if you're a seasoned Spidey fan.
Yeah, ready to untangle the web, Ira. These first two episodes are packed with surprises.
Absolutely. Right off the bat, the show throws us a curveball visually. It's a love letter to Steve Ditko's classic artwork, but the story diverges from what we're used to.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the series plays with our expectations. We see Avengers Tower hinting at a familiar universe, but the timeline seems to split around the time of Civil War. It's not quite the MCU we know.
Right. It's like we're in a slightly alternate reality. And speaking of alternate realities, let's talk about Doctor Strange. We encounter a variant of him, complete with a mustache and a mission to hunt down Venom versions of Venom from other universes.
Yeah, this multiversal element is key. Remember, this Spider-Man's origin story is unique. He's not bitten by a random radioactive spider. This one came through a portal during Doctor Strange's battle with a Venom variant.
It makes you wonder if this spider carries something extra, something beyond just radioactivity. Could that be why this version of Spider-Man develops differently than others?
That's an excellent question. The series definitely hints at the possibility of unique powers spilling from this multiversal spider bite. It could also lead to encounters with other spider people down the line.
Ooh, I love that idea. It would be amazing to see the Spider-Man interact with other versions of himself. Speaking of interesting characters, let's talk about Nico Minoru. She is introduced as Peter's friend, a potential love interest even, but she's got a secret history that comic book fans will recognize.
Yeah, Nico's background is definitely worth exploring. In the comics, she's a member of the Runaways, a group of teenagers who discover their parents are supervillains, talk about family drama.
That's intense. It makes you wonder if those elements of her backstory will come into play in this series. Could we see Nico developing her own powers? Maybe even those connected to magic, given her family's background.
It's certainly a possibility. The series seems to be setting her up as a major player in Peter's life, and her potential connection to magic could add a whole new dimension to their dynamic.
Okay, now for a character who really piqued my interest, Lonnie Lincoln. He's Peter's friend and classmate, but comic book fans will recognize him as the brutal enforcer Tombstone.
Yeah.
Lonnie's inclusion is a stroke of brilliance, especially in how they're developing his character. We see his tough home life, his ambition and the pressure he feels to succeed. It's like they're laying the groundwork for his potential transformation into the villain we know from the comics.
It's like watching a slow-burn thriller unfold. You can almost feel the tension building as he navigates these challenges. Will he rise above them, or will he succumb to the darker impulses that seem to be lurking beneath the surface? Yeah, it's a question that keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it speaks to a larger theme that the series seems to be exploring the choices we make and the paths we choose, especially when faced with adversity.
And speaking of choices and adversity, let's talk about the most intriguing character in these episodes, Norman Osborn. Instead of Iron Man, as in the MCU, it's Norman who takes Peter under his wing as a mentor, offering him an internship at Oscorp. But of course, we know who Norman Osborn really is.
The Green Goblin, and that's where this mentor-mentee relationship becomes really fascinating and potentially dangerous. It's like they've taken the dynamic between Peter and Tony Stark and injected it with a dose of uncertainty and a hint of menace.
But isn't it a bit convenient that Norman Osborn swoops in just as Peter needs guidance? Is it possible he's manipulating the situation to his advantage?
That's a great point. It wouldn't be out of character for Norman to have ulterior motives, especially considering his history in the comics. Is he genuinely interested in mentoring Peter, or is he grooming him for something else, something more sinister?
And let's not forget that Norman might be aware of Peter's identity as Spider-Man. There's a scene where Norman confronts Peter about his abilities, and it's chilling. How much does Norman really know?
Yeah, the way he delivers those lines with that calm, almost knowing demeanor is unsettling. He could be playing a long game here, using his knowledge of Peter's secret to manipulate him, to mold him into something that serves his own agenda.
That's a terrifying thought. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to their relationship. On the surface, it's a mentorship, but underneath it could be a power struggle, a battle for control.
And that power dynamic is something that the series seems to be exploring on multiple levels. It's not just about physical power or technological advancements. It's about knowledge influence, the ways in which those things can be used for good or for evil.
It's like Peter is caught in a spiderweb of manipulation, and he doesn't even realize it yet. And this sense of unease extends beyond his relationship with Norman.
Mm.
Even the seemingly mundane details in these episodes hint at something darker lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes the series so compelling. It's not just about flashy superhero action, it's about the subtle details, the things that make you question what's really going on. For example, there's a scene where Peter first enters Oscorp and encounters a security guard named Jay Gallo. Comic book fans might recognize that name.
Oh, yeah. Jay Gallo is an alias used by the vigilante known as Ricochet. It's like they're hiding clues everywhere. So we have a potential hero working security for a company run by a future supervillain. What are the chances?
It makes you wonder if there are other hidden heroes or villains lurking in the background, waiting for their moment to step into the spotlight. And the connections don't stop there during his internship. Peter meets a group of brilliant young minds, including Asha, a gifted student from Wakanda.
Wakanda forever. I love that they're bringing in characters from different corners of the Marvel Universe. It really expands the scope of the series. And in the comics, Asha has the ability to manipulate light, which could be a really cool power to see in action.
Absolutely. Her presence hints at the possibility of Wakandan technology or even mystical elements being incorporated into the story. And then there's Amadeus Cho, another one of Peter's fellow interns. He's considered one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe and eventually becomes the Hulk.
So not only is Peter potentially being manipulated by Norman Osborn, but he's surrounded by future heroes and villains. It's like a high school reunion for the Avengers, but with a much darker twist.
And let's not overlook Dr. Whitman, who makes a brief appearance in these episodes. Comic book fans know him as the villainous wizard, a frequent foe of the Fantastic Four. It's like the writers are planting seeds for future conflicts, weaving a complex tapestry of heroes and villains that could collide at any moment.
It's almost overwhelming, all the potential storylines they're setting up. And then there's Carla Connors, who, as we mentioned earlier, could be on the path to becoming the Lizard. With all this going on, it's easy to forget that Peter is still just a teenager trying to figure out his life.
Right. That's what makes his journey so relatable, even amidst all the extraordinary circumstances he's dealing with. School friendships, family drama, and, oh yeah, he's also Spider-Man trying to save the city from supervillains and navigate the complexities of his newfound abilities.
He's making mistakes, learning as he goes, and sometimes that involves making tough choices with unintended consequences. Remember that scene where he confronts the burglar who robbed the pizza place instead of turning him over to the police? He gives the guy a second chance, appeals to his conscience.
It's a powerful moment that speaks to Peter's inherent compassion and his unwavering belief in the good in people, but it also highlights his naivete, his tendency to see the best in others, even when they might not deserve it.
Which is something that Norman Osborn could easily exploit. It's like he's playing chess and Peter is just a pawn in his game, but Peter's not the only one grappling with tough choices.
Yeah.
Nico Minoru is dealing with her own internal struggles, especially when it comes to her family's legacy and her potential magical abilities.
Her storyline adds another layer of depth to the series. It explores the themes of family secrets, hidden powers, and the weight of expectations. Will she embrace her magical heritage and become a hero alongside Spider-Man, or will she forge her own path?
I'm really intrigued by her character arc and how it might intertwine with Peter's journey. They both have these extraordinary abilities and the potential to make a difference, but they're also burdened by secrets and uncertainties.
Yeah.
It makes their connection even more compelling.
Yeah, and speaking of compelling connections, we can't forget about Lonnie Lincoln. This series does a great job of portraying their friendship, the genuine bond they share. Even as Lonnie grapples with his own demons, it makes the possibility of him turning into Tombstone all the more tragic.
It's a classic tale of two friends heading down different paths, one towards the light, the other towards the darkness. It makes you wonder if Peter will be able to save his friend from that fate, or if he'll be forced to confront him as an enemy.
That potential conflict, that internal struggle between friendship and duty adds an emotional weight to the story that's sure to resonate with viewers. It reminds us that even in a world of superheroes and supervillains, the most powerful battles are often fought within ourselves.
Let's talk about that fire sequence. The arsonist Butane, while he's a relatively minor villain in the comics, his appearance here raises some interesting questions.
Precisely who hired Butane to set the fire? Was it a random act of arson, or was there a more sinister motive, perhaps someone connected to Oscorp?
And considering that Norman Osborn might be aware of Peter's identity as Spider-Man, it makes you wonder if this fire was somehow orchestrated to test Peter's abilities or to draw him further into Norman's web of influence.
It's a possibility that adds another layer of intrigue to the story. We're constantly being reminded that things are not always what they seem and that even seemingly insignificant events could have far-reaching consequences.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but we're still missing some crucial pieces. And as we delve deeper into this mystery, we have to remember that Peter is still at the center of it all. A teenager trying to find his place in a world that's rapidly changing around him.
He's facing challenges that most teenagers couldn't even fathom, but he's also discovering his own strength, his resilience, his unwavering determination to do what's right, even when it's hard.
And that's what makes him such an inspiring figure, even with all his flaws and uncertainties. He reminds us that even when we feel lost and overwhelmed, we can find the courage to face our fears, to make a difference, and to become the heroes of our own stories.
Wow, it's amazing to think that all this has happened in just the first 2 episodes. We've got multiversal spiders, potential villains lurking around every corner, and a mentorship that feels more like a ticking time bomb. The most obvious challenge is Norman Osborn. We know from the comics that he's destined to become the Green Goblin, and that transformation is bound to have a devastating impact on Peter.
Yeah, imagine the betrayal he'll feel when he realizes that the man he trusted, the man who took him under his wing, is actually his greatest enemy. It's a classic Spider-Man trope, that personal connection to the villain, but it never gets old.
Right. It adds an emotional depth to the conflict that makes it so much more compelling. It's not just about stopping a bad guy. It's about confronting someone you care about, someone you thought you knew. And in this case, it's his mentor, the person who's supposed to be guiding him, protecting him.
And let's not forget that Norman might be aware of Peter's secret identity. He could use that knowledge to manipulate Peter, to force him to do his bidding. It's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Peter's already shown a tendency to be impulsive, to act without thinking things through. Those are traits that someone like Norman Osborn could easily exploit.
It's like Peter is walking a tightrope, and with each step, the rope gets thinner and thinner. He's got to balance his normal life, his responsibilities as Spider-Man, and now this increasingly complicated relationship with Norman.
And all of this is happening while he's still figuring out who he is, what he believes in, and what kind of hero he wants to be. It's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone a teenager.
This series has the potential to be a really powerful coming-of-age story set against the backdrop of this extraordinary world of superheroes and supervillains. It's about the choices we make, the consequences of those choices, and the challenges of growing up in a world that's not always black and white.
And it's about finding your own path, even when you're surrounded by people who are trying to tell you who you should be or what you should do. That's a theme that's sure to resonate with viewers of all ages.
And let's not forget about the other characters who are orbiting Peter's world. Nico Minoru, with her magical potential and her own family secrets. Lonnie Lincoln, walking a precarious path that could lead him towards villainy. Carla Connors, whose scientific pursuits might unleash a monstrous transformation.
The writers have created such a rich and complex web of characters and relationships, and it's exciting to think about how those connections will evolve and intersect as the series progresses.
It's like watching a game of chess, with each move setting the stage for future conflicts and alliances, and at the center of it all is Peter Parker, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, trying to navigate this ever-changing landscape while staying true to himself and his ideals.
I can't wait to see what challenges he'll face, what victories he'll achieve, and what sacrifices he'll have to make along the way. This series has the potential to be something truly special, a Spider-Man story that's both familiar and groundbreaking, heartwarming and heartbreaking, thrilling and thought-provoking.
Well said, Perkma. I'm definitely hooked, and I'm sure our listeners are too. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
It's been a pleasure. Ira, always happy to swing into the world of Spider-Man with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with a new deep dive when the next episodes drop. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on all our latest podcast adventures. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility, so use your comments section wisely.